to see familiar faces and new faces in this call. We are building community, and that's amazing. Thank you for being here. My name is Diana Viola, Communications Associate at McGill School of Continuing Studies at Career Advising and Transition Services. In this call, we have my colleague, Valerie, please.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all.
We have another colleague, Zita Maharaj, with her little baby. She is in mat leave, and she is joining us today. Say hi. Thank you. We also have some volunteers in the backstage. They are behind the scenes helping us casting questions. I believe is Michelle. She is around. And while I present our wonderful speaker, I would like to know if you can write in the chat, where are you logging in from? What's your neighborhood, your city, your country? We are so happy to see variety, diversity, everybody connected in this digital and remote world. So before introducing our dear Elise, I want to set some ground rules, not rules, some instructions to facilitate this session and to ensure a good experience. Feel free to mute yourself. You are automatically set to mute, but please remain muted unless you want to ask a question. Liz will open a moment during the session to receive questions, so please stay muted. This session is recorded, so we'll be sharing this recording later on YouTube. And now I want to introduce our speaker, our dear Liz Falco. She is a career coach and an educator with more than 25 years of experience. And she is a nonprofit leader as well. She has a master's in education and MBA. She uses her natural empathy, a strategic mindset, and an array of unique tools to help individuals and organizations bring a structure and clarity to their thinking and take actions aligned with their strengths and values. Without further ado, please all welcome Liz Falco.
Well, thank you, Diana. And good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure for me to be part of PowerSkills 2021, a real honor. And I look forward to spending the next hour with you. I have a sense it's going to go quickly, and I'm hoping that you'll take a few nuggets away as we go along. And I haven't seen in the chat where everybody is from. I'm assuming, Diana, can you give me a sense? Have people responded?
I was muted.
You're muted, yeah.
Saint-Hubert, Quebec, we have Montreal, we have South Shore, we have Kitchener, Ontario, we have Montreal, Brossard, Myland, Pierrefonds, Toronto, Laval, oh my God, downtown, Montreal.
From all over, that's great. Great, well, again, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to get going. And in fact, I am gonna do that. I'm gonna share my screen as I have a number of slides to help us guide our work together today. So I'm just going to do that now, and I hope it all comes together. So I'm hoping you can all see the screen. Great, great. So I know you're probably all really curious. I've got the title of my workshop called Your Signature Presence, and I'm going to help define that in a few minutes with you. You know, well, we'll get to that. I'm going to go straight ahead into talking a little bit about our objectives for today, because I like to kind of set the stage. So obviously, my hope is that you make some steps towards discovering your signature presence, whatever that is, and we will learn about it. And I also hope that you will take some time today to reflect. And I think this is kind of a gift you've given yourself, I hope, that you'll look at it this way, that you've taken an hour and this is all about you and all about your own reflection. So think of it as a gift that you've given yourself. And so we're going to reflect upon your strengths and identify them and try and find some ways that you might activate them more than you potentially already are. And to get the most out of our time, I am going to ask you to really do some personal reflection. Sometimes people think, well, this is a very selfish endeavor, you know, thinking about myself and talking about my strengths and all of that. And the way I like to look at it is, you know, first of all, none of us probably reflect enough about ourselves and about who we are and what we need and what we want to get the most, so that the world can get the most out of us. And so I think regular reflection is important. And I do see it as an investment in ourselves so that later the world will benefit from you. So that's the kind of the deal we're making here. Take this time now because the world needs you and they need your strengths. And so if you take the time to figure out what those are, the world is really going to benefit. So that's one part of making the most out of our time. The second is that I am going to ask you, this is a kind of hands-on workshop. You're going to have to interact a little bit with each other and with me and share. That's the way we'll all learn best. And the final is to take a learning mindset. There may be things in here you've already thought about, you've talked about, this is maybe not new. Find the nugget for you. You know, think about what is new for you in this process of reflection. Because I think if we all come in with that mindset, we'll all come out with you know, something to take on to our next steps. So let's now sort of think about, oops, went down too many here. Think about what is signature presence. When I say we're going to discover our signature presence, what do I mean? And what I mean is, you know, we each have our own unique written signature, our own fingerprints, and in this case, footprints. They're unique to you. And you also have your own unique signature presence. What it is that you bring to your work and to your play that is unique, different from others. And what you're looking for when you're trying to identify your signature presence is, when are you your genuine, authentic self? When you're truly connected to ideas and situations and people in the environment that you're in. Some people will call it, you know, I'm in the zone or I'm on fire. That's what we're looking for when we're trying to define your signature presence. And, you know, signature presence, there's really, when you're thinking about it, there's no really right or wrong answers here. You know yourself. You know when you are just, you're yourself and you're not really having to work too hard at whatever you're doing because you're in your zone. And I think, you know, you can think of some situations potentially from any aspect of your life where you've been in your signature presence. You know, your signature presence for you, it might be very quiet or loud, could be really messy or contained, subtle or in your face. It's different for everybody. And it's always very potent. And when you're in your signature presence is when you have the power to make a difference, the power to have a positive impact. It's not at the expense of others. You know, you're not in your signature presence when you're putting someone else down. That's not a signature presence. It's when you're really helping, bringing out your very best. So I guess I'll take a couple of minutes right now just to sort of say, like, do you have a sense of what I mean by signature presence? What questions do you have for me about what it actually means? Because I'm wanting you to start thinking about what your signature presence is. For some people, it's putting their head down and going through research and statistics and analyzing it. They're all by themselves and they are just in the zone. For others, they're speaking to a crowd of 1,000 and they are in the zone. They are in their signature presence. So what is it for you? That's what we're going to be asking. But what questions do you have for me before you start thinking about more specifically what it is for you? Any questions from anybody?
Yes, Liz, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it possible that it can be both kind of like quiet, but also messy? Because I consider myself like a pretty calm person, but then I also like to interact and be with people. So can it have both aspects? Like, I don't,
Sure. Yeah. I think it could be described in whatever way it makes sense for you. So I wasn't, these aren't exclusive. You know, there may be times where you use your signature presence in very different settings. And it's still the essence of who you are. So absolutely. This was just trying to get you to think about it for individuals that are kind of trying to figure out how do I, you know, does it have to be in my signature presence that I'm on fire, like literally really extrovert? No, some people are really internal when they're in their signature presence. Does that
Liz,
Mhm.
uh, sorry to interrupt. We have a very interesting question from Sandra Villani.
Okay.
She asked, can I have a different signature presence at work and at home?
You might. I think what the goal is to try and identify what your signature presence is and create a life, both your work and your private life, where you're in your signature presence as much as possible. And it could look different, again, in different settings, but you are still the real you. You're the most genuine you can be. And it might show differently in different places, but you are trying to create a day. Obviously, we can't be in our signature presence all day, every day, you know, all year round. But we're trying to create a life where you are in it as much as possible. Why? Because that's when we're going to all benefit from your presence the most, because you are the real you. Thank you, Sandra. Are there any other questions?
We have comments. Is it possible that we haven't discovered that yet, but you just described?
Absolutely. You might still be in process, and that's a great lead in to the exercise we're going to do to see where we're all at. So I'm going to go into that, and we can take more questions and comments later. So the exercise I'm going to ask you to do, and we're going to take a bit of a quiet time together. I don't know how many of us are on the call right now. It looks like it's about maybe 60 or so. Anyway, you'll take some time, and I want you to just, you know, write on a piece of paper or on your computer experiences where you have exhibited your signature presence. Going back to your childhood, even to high school, to various stages in your life, different aspects of your life. It doesn't have to be work. It could be in your personal life. It could be in your volunteer work. It could be in your extracurricular activities. Whenever it is that you have really kind of felt in the zone. So when I work with my clients, you know, I give them a week to reflect on this. I'm giving you just a few minutes. So don't worry if you don't have it all figured out, but we're just looking for one example of when you think you were close to or in what we call your signature presence. And when you've identified that, try to be specific. You know, it was back in, you know, when I was in second year university and, you know, I was doing a presentation or I was working with a team or whatever it might have been. Try and be specific about the situation. And then answer the question, what would other people observe if they were to see you exhibiting your signature presence? What do they see? What do they hear? What do they feel? And what do they say? Because they're observing you in your signature presence. How does it affect them? And the third is, if you can take it this far in the short time we have today, is to tell a story about a time when you used your signature presence to make a difference in your life or in someone else's life or in the larger system, the organization that you were in or a system that you were involved in. So you can start to extend the impact of you being in your thoughts and reflections around the impact of when you were in your signature presence. And there's one more step, and this one is to say, make a drawing. You can do it like the one on this example. It's just a hand, like, you know, I'm not an artist. This is just a sketch of what represents you in your signature presence. And the reason I ask you to do this is sometimes putting things visually helps us really describe ourselves in that mode for some of us. And I also always say, once you have that image, and you may not get it by today's workshop, but if you think about that, you put it up on the mirror and you know, as you're brushing your teeth every day, you go, this is what I'm aiming for. I want to be in my signature presence as much as I can today. What do I have under my control to try and make that happen? So those are the steps. I know it seems like a lot. But first is trying to identify a situation. What do other people observe? Try and say, is there a story where it's made a difference, and try and make a little sketch. So I'm actually going to give you really only about 5 minutes to do that, or maybe 7. And if you want to shut down your cameras and you just need, to really focus. And then after we do that, we're going to be sharing in small groups in breakout rooms. So my hope is that you'll be able to hear from others about what they've learned from going through this process and what their signature presence is. Are there any questions before you take a little bit of what I call silent writing time? Remember, this is your gift of reflection.
We don't have?
No questions?
No, not yet.
Okay, so I give you the challenge. It is now 3:14. We're going to try and bring you back. You're just working individually right now in about 6 or 7 minutes. We'll keep it quiet. If you have any questions as you're doing this, please put them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. So I'm going to ask you to put your last thought or point down on your paper and rejoin us. I'll give you another just 30 seconds. Your last, it might not be perfect yet. You're still thinking it out. If you're finishing off a drawing, do that. I'm excited to hear about these. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is, and I know we may be at different various spots in this process. You may have just identified the experience. That's okay. But I'd like to take an opportunity, and when we're in a big group like this, sometimes we don't get the opportunity to kind of have an intimate conversation with others, and I want to facilitate that. So we're going to be moving into great breakout rooms of 3. And you're just going to take, and we might not even do 3 minutes each, it might be like a minute and a half each, to share your signature presence. Really just, if you have a drawing, share the drawing and explain it to your group. If you have, this is my definition, just share that. So one aspect of those 4 questions, just so your peers and colleagues here can learn a little bit about you. And so as someone who's listening to, the other 2 individuals in your breakout group, do listen, be curious about them, ask them a few questions and express gratitude, because I appreciate that you're sharing. Takes a bit of courage here to share something kind of personal with people potentially that you don't know. But I think it just helps you, as you share what you think your signature presence is, you will actually bring a little bit more color to it and understand your own deeper understanding of yourself as you do that. So it's part of the process. So I think that Diana and Valerie, we're going to set up some breakout groups for everybody to join.
I believe Valerie is setting up.
Yes, they're ready. I can send everyone over.
Okay, does anyone have questions before we go? So try to get everybody, we're only going to take about 4 or 5 minutes for this. So try and get everyone to get at least a little bit of sharing in your group of 3. Have fun. And I'm going to join a group, so that's fun.
Hi, Chantel. So you're not seeing the pop-up, or it just won't let you? Oh. Hi, Raymond. You asked for help? I don't hear you. Are you on mute? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes,
Oh, okay. Hi, how can I help you guys?
I cannot hear Raymond.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Raymond, do you want to try going into your settings? So at the bottom left, where it says video, there should be a small arrow. No, actually where it says mute, there's a small arrow. And if you click on that arrow, you should be able to set your microphone to a built-in microphone.
Is that better?
There we go. Hi.
Yes, that was probably the problem. It didn't have a bar on the mute, but it certainly wasn't working. I didn't
Okay.
realize that you could actually adjust to different microphones.
And I didn't realize that could be technical support. So this works. Enjoy your conversation. I'll
Thank
see
you
you in the
very
big
much.
room.
Pleasure.
Good. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, Liviu. At least we learned something.
Hi, everyone. So I know that some of you weren't able to join the breakout room, but we could speak in this room if you're able to speak or if you want to engage. See Lena. Lena, I'm going to try, I see you're not assigned, so I'm going to try put you in a room. So you should see a pop-up that asks you to join a room. The same goes for Lorraine. I'll assign you to a room. So you should get a pop-up that asks you to join a breakout room. And I believe Sally, you're not assigned either. So I'm going to assign you to a room and you can just join in on the conversation. Everyone is talking about their own story in terms of their own signature presence and when they felt in sync with that. So I'll send you over. Kendra, I will do the same. I'll repeat if you're just joining into the call. We're currently in a breakout session. So I will assign you to breakout rooms so that you can join into the discussion with other participants and hear their wonderful stories and perspectives. So it's groups of 3. I'll just add you there. Oh. Hey, Victoria.
Hi,
How are you?
good. How are you?
Good. Oh, we're back. Okay. Would you like me to close the rooms, Liz? Okay, we'll do that. I'll bring everyone back again.
So Valerie, are we all back or?
They're heading back now.
Perfect.
Another
You'll let me
30
know.
seconds.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you.
We're down to 2 seconds. They should all be back.
Great. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that was interesting. I was lucky. I had an interesting conversations with one of our participants as well. So it's always great to learn about others. I would love, we're going to have to take like just 2 minutes if there are 1 or 2 people who would be interested in sharing maybe an image that you've made and just a brief explanation or a statement. Is there anyone who would like to, get on camera and share that with us?
Hey, Liz.
Looking for volunteers. Hi, who's this? Chantal?
Yeah. I'm struck by what myself, Gary, and Mercy ended up talking about as being a signature presence. All 3 of us, it was funny because
Okay.
all 3 of us, once we shared our stories, we all realized that our signature presence was the best, what we felt the best, and where we felt we had an impact was when we're actually helping out other people. In my case, it was helping out my stepdaughter through
Right,
a tough time. And in their case, they're both teachers, and it's moments where they felt they had an impact on someone.
right. Yeah, and that can, and I guess the setting could be slightly different. You might be bringing different strengths to that helping role, but probably not that uncommon. Did you have a drawing at all, Chantal?
Yeah, I was sharing with them that, for my story was, it was just little symbols, really. It was a heart, a smiley face, an arrow pointing upwards, and a mountaintop.
Right. Okay. So interestingly, you're working with, it was something more in your personal life that you identified. And then now the question is, if that is like when you're feeling on fire, I don't know what kind of work you're doing, but is there somehow to translate that into your work, even in pockets or pieces, or in a full transformation, if that's what's needed? But that's sort of the next question, I think, for you, Chantal.
Absolutely. I'm a manager of a team of 7. So that moment, that story I thought of with my stepdaughter is something I do regularly with the people that are in my team.
Yeah, great. So it sounds like um, you're living your signature presence quite regularly then.
I try.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that, Chantal. And I think, I'd love to hear others. Maybe at the end we'll come back because I'd like to get into a related exercise that really kind of builds on this one. So I'm going to move ahead on our slides. And it's really about, and it's a question that, I think Sonia, who I was meeting with during the breakout rooms, was also talking about. It's like, it's one thing to identify your signature presence and another thing to kind of activate it. And when we talk about signature presence, it's kind of the first step in kind of identifying some of our strengths. And certainly as a career coach and as an educator, philosophically and ideologically really espouse a strengths-based approach in all my work. And so if you're thinking about your signature presence is really what are part of showing your strengths and what settings, it leads to the conversation of what are our, it's not just one strength, you have several, what might they be? And then how do I activate them and make sure that, again, the world and those around me in the world are making the most of it, most of those strengths. So we're going to use do an exercise. Again, it's a taste of what you might do in a fuller sense if we had more time. And it's using the Clifton strengths. Some of you may have done this assessment before. There are 34 strengths in the Clifton Strengths Assessment. You can go online and do the full assessment. We're not doing that today. But one of the versions of it is you answer all these questions and your top 5 strengths kind of come out of it. And what I like about it, and I use it with my clients, is that it's not kind of like, oh, you should be a lawyer or you should be a teacher. It's here are your top 5 strengths that are transferable to many settings and many types of careers, but it gives you the vocabulary to talk about yourself and maybe potentially different words to talk about your strengths. So these are the 34 strengths that the Clifton Strength Assessment uses. That these are the names of them. Some of them are obvious what they mean, and others may be kind of mysterious about what they mean. And so in a second, I'm going to ask Valerie and Valerie and Diana. One of them is going to help give you access in the chat to a link that gives the definitions of each of those. And in fact, we could go ahead and do that. You're going to read the definition of the strengths in the link in the chat and choose one that resonates for you. When you read it, it's like, yes, that I know is one of my strengths, or you would surmise that if you did the assessment, it would come out as one of your strengths. So just read, I'll give you a minute to access the link, look at the definitions and choose one. And then I'll give you a minute to do that. And then I'll give you the next instructions. So is that available in the chat?
Yes, it is. I'm just wondering because I know that some people are logged in through their personal tablets or phones. So I don't know if they are able to open it. So what if I share my screen?
Sure.
Document. That's good.
Sure. So I should unshare. Is that right?
Okay. If you want, I have it ready here.
Okay. Shoot, what's happening right now? Did I unshare?
We don't see your screen.
You don't?
No, we see you.
Oh, good. So you want to share then?
For sure. I will share my screen.
Great. Thanks, Diana. It might be hard to read. Oh, good.
You can see
So
it.
your goal is just to choose one of these.
No, I can. It's not complete, so I will scroll down.
Yeah.
I will give you a minute to check this out and then I'll scroll down.
Sure. We're just looking for one today for each of you.
Okay. I'm going to continue.
Right.
Moving.
And then the last section. So hopefully within the next 30 seconds or so, people are choosing their one strength. Just for this purposes of this exercise. I think that should do it, Diana.
Okay.
Hopefully everyone's chosen something. And I'm going to go back to sharing.
Yes, we have
my screen.
Comments in the chat.
Great. What are you seeing while I get this back going here?
Okay, Chantal says command.
Command. Okay.
1 second. Doina says strategic.
Okay.
Lacey says individualization. Beryl says belief. Rafael says empathy. Andrea says consistency. I believe it's Michelle who says communications and compassions. Sandra Biani says command. Sonia says learner. Analytical, significance, relator, empathy, analytical, strategic, ideation, developer. Wow.
We've got them all. That's great. Perfect. So everyone's, looks like most people have chosen one. And, you know, again, there's not really a right or wrong answer for this, but it's just an exercise for you to start thinking about, okay, if I identify that strength, how could I activate it? And the way to think about, start that process is to think about the very first time you noticed that strength in yourself. When was it? What were you doing? And what was your impact when you had that strength? So think way back, the earliest time that you might have demonstrated that. And then I'm going to ask you to think about creating a timeline of stories where you've shown that strength throughout your life. So I'm going to give you an example. So for me, one of the strengths of the Clifton strengths that comes out is developer. And I heard someone else in the crowd is a developer. Basically someone who likes to recognize and cultivate the potential in others. That's something that, you know, when I'm in that zone of helping someone look at strategically, you know, reaching their potential, whether that's as a teacher, as a coach, as a consultant for an organization, I can feel like I'm in the zone. I'm in that signature presence. It's one of my strengths. Now I'm just trying to meshing a little bit our terms of signature presence and strength. And I'll just show you my timeline for experiences that I've had both in my professional and personal life where I've had the opportunity to do that. So the very first time that I remember being, you know, look back and go, when did I realize like that was something I really enjoyed and I really felt like on fire in my thing. And that was back when I was in high school, my final year of high school. We had a big sister, little sister program, and I was connected with a grade 8 student. And I remember at the beginning thinking like, I have nothing to offer her. I don't know anything. And, you know, over time we built a relationship and I was able to help her. And in fact, I learned a lot from her as well, as all these things are always more reciprocal than we realize. So that's the very first time I can imagine myself as a developer. And then I just go on, and I won't bore you with all the details of all these things, but, you know, at one point I was the CIT, a counselor and training director, a summer camp. I became a teacher. I went back and did my MBA, but realized like I'm really missing that developer side of me while I was back at school. So I volunteered in the local library and helped a young student with his literacy. I'm an aunt and I'm a stepmother. I ran a summer camp for my nieces and nephews years ago. So that and my personal life, certainly love helping develop the potential in others. I was a school leader, a nonprofit leader, and now as a consultant and career coach. So that's kind of my timeline. You can create your own, and I'd love to hear a couple. And the reason to do this is partly, you know, this could be part of your resume, right? This is building a strengths-based resume, a resume built on your signature presence. And so, you know, you're not necessarily going to put everything in there, but you can start to say, okay, here are the key moments in my life where I've used this strength. And, you know, you might do this for 5 or 6 strengths and kind of see how that all fits together. Are you actually giving yourself finding opportunities where you're activating these strengths? And if not, how could you shift things so that you be in a position where you are activating those strengths? So I would love to hear from others about, you know, you could take a couple minutes to jot down your own timeline, or just off the top of your head, maybe someone could share, hey, this is my strength, and this is the first time I recognized it. Because that's usually the key question. People are like, I don't even remember. Think about, when was the first time you recognized that strength in yourself? Anyone want to share?
I'll go ahead and share it, Sandra.
Thanks, Sandra.
Welcome. I kind of did this in the previous exercise, not realizing it was coming.
Okay,
but
that's okay.
strength that came out was leadership. So I chose command.
Okay.
But it's also a question of empathy and helping others, right?
Mm-hmm.
But earliest is when I was a brownie. I joined the brownie group and I was a co-leader immediately. And then the following year, I was a leader of my own little group. And
Right.
that continued throughout to guide. So I guess that started really early.
Right. And it's amazing. I mean, I don't know if you've thought about that recently, about being a brownie and how much of that had an impact on, you know, developing your sense of self, but it's kind of interesting to find the seed of it, right? And see how it's grown over time. So do you feel you're in your own career, Sandra, that you're able to, with that particular strength, activate it?
Often, very often. I didn't realize that's what I was activating or portraying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're younger, you're bossy, and then whoop, you've learned that that's really leadership.
Right.
So yes, I've seen it in progression, and I've seen it throughout high school and then in the career. But I did think about this, I want to say maybe a year or so ago, and that's how I pinned it back to the brownie experience.
Right. Interesting. And okay, well, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to see if anyone else wants to share their own experience and timeline with a strength.
Liz, this is Gary.
Hi, Gary.
Hey, it's funny that she talks about that because my first recollection was similar. When I was 15 or 16, the Boy Scouts provided that opportunity for me, and I got to go to a world jamboree in Greece with only a very few Canadians who were selected. So that was kind of my starting point for saying, hey, I can be an achiever. So I figured that my signature, or at least my word, my strength was achieving. And there's several other examples during the course of my life that, you know, that reflect that. And one of them was starting a company with a colleague of mine and then building it over time. So
right.
I think it was a signature moment, if you like.
Right. So that's great. So you can see how that built over time. And again, you know, if looking back at the time, you may not have kind of thought of it that way, right? But you now see the thread that you've been able to keep coming back to. And I think, you know, I think we all kind of go back to our signature presence when given the opportunity. And so it's interesting that you're able to really to identify those key moments in your timeline. And you know, both of your examples with the you know, brownies and Boy Scouts and things really, as an educator, reminds me, and this is a bit of a side note, but just the incredible importance of giving young people a breadth of opportunities, because, you know, it might not have been brownies, it might have been in something else, but if you don't get those opportunities to try things, you don't get to experiment with your strengths or find them, right?
No, and I think, you know, Liz, it's interesting because with all of the technology that kids are surrounded with, they often don't get those opportunities anymore. And I'm not sure what the impact will be long term, but, you know, it's interesting how it led us into to discover our strengths, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas kids today might not have quite that same opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies. I mean, it's easy. I think it's totally a different setting in some ways, and that's a whole different conversation, the impact of technology on young people. But I think they also have other opportunities that we didn't have to, you know, in a different setting, maybe it's digital, maybe it's in a virtual setting, to still activate their strengths. It can be more challenging sometimes, but I think the opportunities are there, but maybe a little harder to create. I understand what you're saying. Thank you. I'm going to go on to some tips because I do want to leave a little bit of time at the end for general questions. So I thank you for your participation, to all of you, for, as I said at the beginning, to reflect and then engage in your reflections and sharing. So I have just a few tips about strengths. Again, it's signature, presence, and strengths. One is to really take some time to understand your strengths, whatever, you know, there's lots of different ways of doing that. Even, you know, whether it's through an assessment like that, asking people who know you well, who've seen you in action, you know, understanding your strengths is going to help you make choices in the future so that you are optimizing them. And this is one, hang out with people that bring out your signature presence and strengths. This is kind of a personal thing, but it's also within your professional realm. It's like, if you're going to be in an organization, or you're going to, where you're just being dragged down and not being able to be in your signature presence, maybe it's a time to pause and kind of say, what kind of shift do I need to make? What kind of opportunities? And same with the action in your personal life. If people are not, allowing you to be in your signature presence, for you to be the genuine you have to question, like, are these the friendships I need and want? And that can be difficult, but something to think about. Recraft your life to use your strengths, again, in your work, in your relationships, and in play, and in something that's larger than you. The world needs you and your strengths. Identify them, find ways of activating them. Again, whether that's in your community, in your work, or in your personal, family, etc. We need them. This is a fun one. Go on a strengths date. What I like to encourage is, maybe you've identified your 5 strengths, and a colleague or a partner or, a friend has their strengths, and right now, maybe you have to go on a virtual date, but you sit down and you kind of go, hey, this is one of my strengths. I'm a developer. Like, what do you think? Oh yeah, I think I've seen you do this and I've seen you do that. They may help you have a deeper understanding of those strengths, help you fine tune your way of describing them, and vice versa. You get to know each other. It's one thing to say, what are your favorite pastimes on a date, but what are your strengths? What a question. So consider that as you're meeting new people, again, whether it's a romantic dating situation or maybe a networking situation. Use your strengths storyline to inform your resume, your cover letter, your interviews. It's a great way to prepare all of those things, because you've taken the time to identify several strengths and where they fit into your life so far, and then potentially how they fit with a particular job that you're applying to. So again, it gives you vocabulary to talk about yourself, and it gives you stories to tell, because my feeling is that your resume, your cover letter, your interview is all about telling your stories. You know yourself well, you know your stories. This is another approach to telling those stories. I hope that would be helpful to you. And lastly, no one does it alone. When it comes to kind of thinking about these things, about whether you're looking for a job or career transition, ask for input and help from those around you, from this, the career services that are around you in your community, because I think, sometimes we think that we have to figure this out on our own, and no one does. No one does. You need mentors, you need, support systems to help you kind of make this choices based on all of this information, this reflection that you're doing. So just before I open up to some more general questions, I just want to share with you, this is my shot of my website. It's lizfalco.ca. I'm also on Instagram, Liz_Falco. Happy to have you follow me and be in touch with me. You can get all my contact information there if I can be of any assistance to you, or if you want to continue the conversation. But I think we have like 3 minutes for questions or comments. Would love to hear your feedback on, whether this has been a helpful reflection time for you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hey, Liz. Could you maybe give an example of how you've seen somebody use their strengths on a resume or in a cover letter? I get the part about interviews. I feel like I did the Strengths Finder, and I don't have a whole story about it. I use my top one and tell a story about that. But what about just your 5 in the resume or in a cover letter?
Right. Well, I think part of it is when you're looking for the job in the first place, you're wanting to find a job that matches your strengths, right? So in that very first, you're looking at the competencies and the requirements, and you're saying, okay, like, this is a good fit because I have the strengths they're looking for. So one is just applying to the right jobs. And then when you're thinking about your cover letter, your cover letter is sort of a precursor to your interview. So as a way to maybe share 1 or 2 stories that demonstrate the strengths that they're asking for in the job description. So it's kind of it's a matching process, right? Dotting, making the dotted lines between what they're looking for and what your strengths are, and then putting that potentially in your cover letter. Of course, your resume is also going to demonstrate and give evidence of some of your strengths and some of your experience, and also tell a story, but in a slightly different way through the resume. So that's how I see it. I think that the cover letter, I think a lot of us are writing cover letters that are kind of just standard. And one of the things that I would recommend is to really think about writing a cover letter that's a little bit more disruptive, that catches the eye, that catches this, starts off with something like, woo, that makes the reader want to read it, because they're seeing so many of these cover letters, and they often say the same thing as your resume. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Liz, and thank you everyone for your comments and questions. We have so many more in the chat, so I will make sure that I can send the questions to you, or I invite you all to follow Liz, to connect with her, to comment in her publications, in her posts, so you can get interaction with her and she can answer your questions. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your precious time with us. Just let you know that our emails are open for your questions, comments. We will send out a survey for get your important feedback to improve our summit. We invite you to keep connected with us all along these 3 days. Tomorrow and today we have more sessions, and on Saturday, so we'll hope to see you around. On another note, you may be wondering, why did we include a donation button at the top left of our website? Well, it is because the School of Continuing Studies is receiving support from its extended community. So if you can and if you want, please pass by and donate. Every contribution is very much appreciated, welcome, and it's a gesture of love. Thank you very much for being here today, and see you in more sessions. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure, Liz.
And thank you so much.